So I'll tell you where we are. What to do. I don't even need the Chumash for this first Ramban. Okay, this is a Ramban that is a Ramban that is summative of the whole story of the Exodus. So I think you know the story of the Exodus, right? Jews were in Egypt, 10 plagues, yada yada yada, came out, and so forth and so on. So the last Ramban on Parshas Bo, okay, and and in this one actually, this page number 296 it begins, okay. So it begins on, it's in the middle of 13:16. Okay, let me see if I can find the page because it starts in the middle. You want to find an English one?
No, it's okay.
Here's one in English, okay?
Oh, okay.
Okay. It's right here on this side. Maybe you can share with Morris.
Yeah.
Okay, good. And on this one, it's going to be, it says V'ata. What's that? This is the Chumash. This is the Chumash, and this is the Ramban. They look almost the same because they're printed with the same type of color.
Yeah, the
but
same.
They just confuse you. So let me just find the page here. It should be. What did you say?
So this is the Ramban next.
Ramban Nachmanides. Yes. Just give me 1 minute. Right. It's Shin Mem Hey. In your thing, 4 lines from the end. In the middle of the line, V'yata Omar Lecha. Okay? So this is after the story, the Jewish people have come out, and we'll have to go back. We're going backwards, but this is such a key Ramban, I want to do this first, even though it's the end of the story. Parshas Bo. So the Jews have come out, and next week's Parsha, by the way, is at the end of Bo. They've come out, they've actually eaten the Korban Pesach, they're on their way out, and next week, of course, we get to the sea. So this is the time the Ramban wants to summarize the whole purpose of all the mitzvos in general, and why this story is so important. Why do we have to spend so much time on this historical event? The truth is, we enjoy the stories of the Torah, but the Torah is really meant to be a book of laws. It's a legal book. It's a Sefer Mitzvot. The only laws we had were about the Korban Pesach and about Rosh Chodesh and so forth, which is the very end of the story. So now the Ramban says, V'yato omar lecha klal b'tam mitzvot rabot. I'm going to tell you, after telling you the whole story and commenting on all the parts of the story, I'm going to tell you now the reason for many of the mitzvot in the Torah, and why the relationship is to how it's important to know the story of the Exodus. Hinei me'et hayot avodat gilila balam me'adar me'mei enosh, from the time when people began to worship idols, which is from the generation of Enosh, which is the 2nd, 3rd, 4th generation after Adam, and people began to get confused. Initially, Adam and Eve believe in one God. So actually, monotheism is the first belief of the Torah. How did people start beginning to worshiping different gods and idols? So it's called Avodat Kochavim, the worship of the stars. They looked at stars as a power of God. They looked at the heavenly bodies as power of God. And then over the course of time, they began to forget that there was a God behind the power of the universe, behind the world of nature. And so the items in nature, whether it was stars or idols or gods or stone of wood that they made, took unto themselves a power unto itself. It didn't become a symbol, but became a power by itself. For example, we don't have icons in the Beis Knesset, but of course we do have an Aron Kodesh in the front. We daven to the Aron Kodesh, not because the Aron Kodesh is what we're davening towards. The Aron Kodesh, which holds the Torah, happens to be the representative of reminding us HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us the Torah. So we face towards the Aron. We're actually facing east to the Beis Mikdash, but if the Aron Kodesh were facing in a different way, we'd face the Aron. But not that the Aron is what we're praying to. So from the time that the Jewish people began worshiping idols, people began to get confused in their sense of belief and real belief in gods. And what did they forget about? Mehem kofrim ba'ikar. Some people denied that there ever was a God who, at all together, there is no God in the world, everything is random. V'yomrim ki olam kadmon. And they said the world itself existed like this all the way back to antiquity. Ki chashu b'Hashem v'yomar lohu. They denied there ever was a God, there ever was a creator, there ever was an intelligent creation. There never was a God. Everything existed as it was all the way back, and never was a beginning at all. That's a concept that, by the way, a number of scientists have, that there was a Big Bang, but they don't know when the Big Bang was, and the Big Bang happened by itself. But now, why did it happen? It was just a Big Bang. I don't know. know, but there never was a God. So one group of people deny that there's a God. And some people said, no, there is a God, but God doesn't know what's going on down here. How could they know that God knows it's here? How could God know be up there in the heavens and yet know what's going on down here? So in other words, yes, there was a God. He created the world, but once He made the world spins on its own. So there was a creator, there was an intelligent creation, but the intelligent creator had nothing to do with the created beings once it's here. We're on our own, folks. God doesn't even know what's going on here. God's busy up there. And in fact, to a large extent, the Romans and Greeks believed this. Their gods were on the top of Mount Olympus. They were cavorting. They were having a good time. They didn't really look down primarily what's going on down the earth, unless they wanted to make a little trouble. And then there's a third group who say, there is a God who created. God even knows what's going on here, but God has no real concern about what's going on here. He can see, He can tell, He may know what's happening to you, but He has no personal relationship with you. Do you see the difference between the last two? First one was no God altogether. Second one, there was a God, but He doesn't know what's going on. Third is God knows what's going on, but He has no actual personal relationship with you. And v'yasu adam k'digei ayam shelo yashkech hakel bahem ve'enim lahem onesh hasachar. And the people are like the digei ayam. Harold, come on in. People are like the fish of the sea, that God doesn't really care about them the same way you don't care. You can't tell one fish from the other. Even if you could tell one fish from the other, then you would. We're actually reading a Ramban here, so we're starting here. Okay, we're right at the bottom of the page. We started in the middle. So some people say that we're like the fish of the sea, and God is not really concerned about them. You're not really concerned whether one fish or two fish or 1,000 fish, how many schools of fish there are, and you surely don't know about each individual fish in there, and if you do know about the fish, you're not going to influence its life unless you're trying to catch it. And there's no reward and punish. And the Yomru, Azav Hashem Ador, God abandoned the land. So there are these three false beliefs that existed with idol worship, and that's why people made their own little idols, so because they didn't believe that there could be a big God on high that would be evolved and aware and concerned about everything that goes on here. So either they believed, the false beliefs were they believed there's no God, no creator. Number two, they believed that there may have been a creator, but God does not know what's going on down here. And second of all, even if God knows what's going on down here, He really has no personal concern. We can't build a relationship with the Almighty. So far, so good. So these are the false beliefs. We're right here. I'm probably turning over the page to the very beginning here. So these were the false beliefs that began to kind of creep up in terms of what happened when people began denying the primacy of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And this happens very early on, so that we find by the time of Avraham, everybody's worshiping idols. Avraham has to come back to Hashem. So it's not Avraham discovers Hashem. Avraham is actually returning to the original primal belief, which was the belief in God that Adam and Eve had. And when God wants to show and do to a group or to an individual, and God changes, He does a wonder, He does a miracle by changing the normal routine of the world and its normal course of nature. So suddenly everybody realized that these three beliefs are all false and phony. They're not true. Why? So if there's a great miracle that happens that breaks nature, it shows that there is a God who set up nature, who can decide to change nature. So first we see there's God, and Yodea, He knows, and He's a powerful God. He knows what's going on here. Umashgiach v'yachol, and He also has ashkach, He has a connection to what's going on here. So therefore, when there is a miracle, this shows and proves the ability of God and the knowledge of God and the involvement of God in the daily life of individuals. And if this miracle occurs when it is preceded by a prophet who predicts it's going to happen, God sends a prophet who says, tomorrow there will be lice, tomorrow there will be locusts, tomorrow there will be blood, then it really supports more the truth of the prophecy, that God can speak to man, and God can reveal His secrets to His prophets who are His servants, and this will keep the foundations or set up the foundations of the Torah itself. So in other words, if you have a wondrous miracle occur, it shows there is a God and God is involved and God is here. If God is predicted, it underscores even more so the ability of God to be involved in human nature and human knowledge and human involvement.
So then how do we explain all these other religions?
How do we explain them?
Yeah, the ones that are worshiping the cow and the whatever.
They believe that the cow has power. Do you believe the cow has power?
No.
Okay. So why do they believe they
that's
have?
What I'm saying. Even after all these miracles that have happened, and they know about them, they can read about them, and yet they still.
So the answer is there is what is called news and fake news, right? They have their alternative type of history that they believe in. They have their own traditions. So I don't know how more to say there. Well, I guess we would have to ask them. But they believe that these things occurred in a different way. But HaKadosh Baruch Hu at this point made it very clear to everybody what was going on and what took place in Egypt. And therefore, if you go through the plagues, you find 3 different times where it says HaKadosh Baruch Hu is making people aware of something. And therefore the Torah says, and with the miracles that occurred in the plagues in Egypt, it says Laman, it says in chapter 8, it says Laman Teda Ki Hashem B'Kevar. Moshe speaks to Pharaoh and says, I'm going to bring the next plague, which is that you'll know that there's a God in the midst of the land. Lo Roda Lashkachat, to show to Pharaoh that God has an involvement, has a connection to what's going on here. In other words, Pharaoh, you'll see that I am God in the middle. I'm not far away in the heavens. I don't know it's not that I don't know what's going on. I know clearly what's going on. I'm right here, and I'm going to show you by bringing the plague tomorrow to you. Not simply it's random chance of nature that occurs, but really this is God who's making the rules, and then as God makes the rules, He can break the rules. He makes the rules, He can tweak the rules. He decides which road signs to put up. He can decide if it's 100 clicks an hour or it's 30 clicks an hour. People can't make that change. It's some higher being which made it. V'amar leman teda ki l'Hashem ha'aretz. And again, it says in chapter 9, earlier on in the plagues, Moshe says to Pharaoh, I'm going to bring the next plague, that you'll know ki l'Hashem ha'aretz, that the land belongs to God. L'rod al chidush, that God can change. God can make brand new things. God made the world from new. God is the creator of the world. Kihem shalosh shebra mi'ayim. Everything in the world is God's. He made it from nothing. V'amar, and he also says a third time in once again chapter 9. V'amar bavor teda ki ein kamoni b'chol haaretz. And Moshe says to Pharaoh, you'll know that there's no one beside me, besides God, in the whole land. L'harot al yicholet, to show Pharaoh that God has got the ability and power to do everything. Shu shalit bakol, he controls everything. One God controlling everything. Ein makeh biado, nothing, no one and nothing can stop him. Because in all of these values and beliefs, the Egyptians either denied, or even if they didn't deny it completely, they weren't quite sure if it's really true. And therefore, therefore all these 10 plagues that occurred, all of the miracles are really witnesses to give testimony, true testimony in the belief of God, His Torah, the power of God, the connection of God, the knowledge of God, the involvement of God in this world. That was the whole power of the whole purpose of what the 10 plagues were. Now, ostensibly, the simple reading of stories that we're getting the Jews out of Egypt. But just to get the Jews out of Egypt, we just said the Jews were enslaved, the Jews got out. It's just showing Pharaoh and showing the world and showing all the Egyptians the power of the Almighty in all of nature. We talked last week, we talked about the different spheres, high, lower, middle, and high, right with the Makot, which the Maral says, and the Siva Shalom said. But it means that God controls everything. God was involved in all the parts of nature. That was the message to Pharaoh. That was the message to everyone who was there. That's why the story is recorded. And therefore, this showed people that if you're going to worship idols, you are totally erroneous, because you think that your little idol is going to have power. There's only one power in the world, God. You can't make a sub-God, or you can't make a God that's going to be a personal God for this and for that and for something else. It's only one HaKadosh Baruch Hu.
Yeah, but did we expect them to act any differently after thousands of years of worshipping a dog or whatever?
But they learned the lesson that what they're worshipping is wrong.
But Abraham himself, his father was an idol.
Correct.
Worship.
So it's very comfortable.
Would he not have been brought up the same way?
Yes, he was.
And he realized on his own. we expect the Egyptians, the whole nation, to change.
So we expect
because Moshe Rabbeinu shows up.
Well, it's not clear if they're really going to change, and if they don't change or don't change. But for that moment, they suddenly were aware of what the reality is.
Yes.
Now, people get very comfortable with what they do. Sometimes people do things that are not the most efficient thing to do. I'm willing to bet that there are many times you drive, it's harder today with Waze, but you drive a certain road, even if you could find a shorter way, but you're comfortable with that road. You do things because they're habit forming. So the Egyptians were habit formed into serving their idols. But for this moment, now, this is really not just a lesson for the Egyptians. Because the lesson for the Egyptians, it wouldn't be our Torah, it would be a Torah book for the Egyptians. So the Ramban now has the test to tell us why it's important for us. All he's told us so far is the real significance of the story of the 10 plagues is not only the Jews got out, but to show everybody that anyone who worshipped idols was completely mistaken, because this is a false belief, and the proof it's a false belief, and there's one God who controls the blah, 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 of the 10 plagues that occurred.
Yeah, but let's say Moshe Rabbeinu was shown up at the door of Pharaoh.
Yes.
Let my people go.
Pharaoh says no.
And he says, okay, go.
Yeah. Then
Would that have changed the
we'll never know.
history?
We'll never know.
Hypothetical question. Would they have been...
Sorry? Hypothetical question. We don't know.
We don't know.
Okay?
Well, no, I'm just saying.
The answer is maybe the fact that it didn't happen that way means that it was supposed to happen.
No, but would that have changed their religion?
What really happens is power becomes the paradigm of all, or the example of all the idol worshippers in the world. He's the strongest at that point, and even he who believed in idol worship, who deified himself as a god, he was forced to admit that there's a God above him.
But we have them today.
Okay? I didn't say it exists for all time. Well, so that's because the purpose of the story is not for the Egyptians. The purpose of the story, but every Egyptian understood this, is going to be for the Jewish people. So I have to come to the next part. So hold on to the question. So once again, if this was only a book to be written for Egyptians, we wouldn't have it in our Torah. We'd have it in the Egyptian book of their Bible, right? It wouldn't be recorded for us. So the first part, though, is what's the whole purpose, is showed everybody in the world what the real story is with God and creation, and the idol worship is only a very faint mimic of anything that deals with God. Ubavur, now continues Ramban. This once again is a crucial Ramban. Ubavur ki HaKadosh Baruch Hu lo yaseot mofet b'chol dor l'nei kol rasha o kofar. Because God does not do miracles for every wicked person or heretic or faithless person. God doesn't simply shuckle out miracles out of his back pocket every time there's something happens in the world. He saves it for special occasions. So therefore, because God doesn't do miracles every time, and we today, and I could want to just answer this, we live in an era of what we call Hester Panim. There is a hiddenness of the face of God. We don't see God as clearly. So Yitzaveh otanu shenasa tamid zikron v'ot lasher ro'inenu. So therefore God commanded us at the end of Parshas Bo, we should have a remembrance and a record of everything that we saw, that our ancestors saw in Egypt. And we will write this down and we'll copy this for our children. Livnehem, and their children to their children. Uvnehem l'dachron, and their children's children's children until the last generation. We're going to record this. There's a mitzvah Zecher L'Yitziat Mitzrayim. There's a mitzvah on the night of Pesach called Sipur Yitziat Mitzrayim, to tell the story. We call that the Haggadah. This is the reason we have all of this put down, that we're going to do this once a year, tell the story, and every day you remember Egypt, because the important of the lesson is not for the Egyptians, the important lesson is for me. And it's a very significant mitzvah, this mitzvah tasei, to remember Zecher L'Yitziat Mitzrayim, a person eats chametz on Pesach, you get karet, your life is cut. Uvazivat Pesach, and if you leave the Pesach and you don't bring the Pesach, you don't do it properly, you don't bring the Korban Pesach. And everything that occurred in the story, we write, and we put it on our hands, and we put it between our eyes. That's the tefillin. The tefillin have the parshiot, which talk about Yitziat Mitzrayim, that we remember coming out of Egypt, the 4 parshiot. And we also write the first 2 chapters of the Shema, which talk about following God and God taking us out and so forth. It doesn't say God took us out, but it actually talks about the power of God on our mezuzah, which which is similar to what they did on the night of Pesach where they put the blood. That we should remember God taking us out from Egypt as well in the morning and evening. We say in the morning, we have the bracha of Goal Yisrael, the bracha after Shema, both in the morning and in the afternoon. In the evening for Ma'ariv, in the morning it's Emes V'Yatziv, in the evening it's Emes V'Emunah. And the bracha ends off, the bracha goes a couple of pages during Siddurim, it ends off Goal Yisrael. God took us out and redeemed us. Sur Yisrael, Kuma Be'ezus Yisrael, redeem us like you did then and to come back to us. K'mo she'amru, Emes V'Yatziv D'Oraita, like the Gemara says, to record that God is true and to underscore the validity of God is a positive commandment min HaTorah, mima shekatuv, as the pasuk says in Dvarim, Laman Tizkar et Yom Tzedcha me'eretz Mitzrayim kol yimei chayecha, that you should remember you're coming out of Egypt all the days of your life, all the days of your life, the evening, and also we make a sukkah every year. It's also part of that. He just throws it at the end. It's not as direct. That's about wandering in the desert. All of these mitzvot, which we take for granted, are all ways to keep in our consciousness all of the story that led to this, that God took us out. So in other words, this is not about Egyptians, but there's so many mitzvot through the Torah that are Zecher L'Yetziat Mitzrayim, to remember the Exodus. Why? Not because historically that's when we start as a people, to show us that that's the power of God. For one moment, all the world stood up and said, we understand the power of God, and anything else is nothing and zero. And in fact, there were many, many more mitzvot that are Zecher L'Yetziat Mitzrayim. To remind us in all generations that we shouldn't forget, there shouldn't be an opening, there shouldn't be a possibility of someone who wants to deny or say it's not true about the belief in God. And look how easy it is to do the mitzvah. A person who spends a zuz to buy a mitzvah. How much does a mitzvah cost? Now it's not pennies. It could cost you probably $50, $60, $70 to get a parchment today, right? Anyone buy mitzvah lately?
Yeah.
Okay.
$70.
Because you're right, you're paying for it. But still, $70 is not a lot of money to remember a mitzvah. Right? Okay? So you can get an etrog, but you only use the etrog for 7 days, or a mezuzah for the same price, and you put it on your door for a long time. So when you put it on your door, kavav pitcho, v'nat kavein binyana kfar horado b'shchidush olam b'yideta b'roi v'ashkachanto. And by putting the mezuzah on your door, you are actually intending to give praise or to recognize that God created the world, that God is involved in the world, that there is a creator who knows what's going on, v'gam b'nevuah. And there also were prophecies that God gave, which is what he spoke to Moses. V'hemin b'chol pinot ha-Torah, and you will know all the corners of the Torah. Besides the fact that you see how God is merciful and kind for those who follow His commands. He took us out from slavery to freedom. And gave great kavod, great honor in the merit of the ancestors who were fearing God. So God did this all as a way to kind of reward us, and God did this all because we followed His mitzvot and so forth. So by following the mitzvot, there's a whole whack of them that are Zecher L'Yetziat Mitzrayim, but every mitzvah that we're doing, we're now going to remember about the Exodus story, not just what happened, but the fact that HaKadosh Baruch was there. So this is like the whole key story is the foundation of the Jewish faith. Before we get to the Har Sinai. Ulafikach, and therefore, Amru, the rabbis say in Pirkei Avot, Hevei Zahir mitzvah kala kavachamura. A person should be as careful about an easy mitzvah or a light mitzvah like a strict mitzvah. Shekulam chamudot v'chavivot me'od, because each mitzvah is wanted or needed and beloved and very beloved. Because Shebechol Shah Adam modeh b'hem le'elokah, because every moment that a person does the mitzvah, he is giving praise to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He's recognizing, more than praise, he's recognizing his God. V'kavanat kol mitzvot shnamin be'elokeinu, and the reason for all the mitzvot is we should believe in our God, v'nodei lav shu bra'anu, and recognize He created us, He created the world and us. V'hi kavanat ha'itzirah, that is the intention for the creation, that's the purpose of creation. She'ein lano tama cher b'itzirah rishonah, there's no other reason for the initial creation of the world except that one day there will be a people who will recognize God. So we are the culmination of creation. V'ein le'el chayfetz b'tachtonim l'vad zen, God really has no want want, no purpose, no request of the people living on this world except this, which is that God should know God, man should know God, and should praise and recognize God who created him. So all of this is really, once again, about knowing and recognizing God. This all comes from the story of the 10 plagues. This all comes from recognizing of the story of the Exodus. And the intention for our raising our voice in davening and shul, and the kavanat batekenes yod, and the reason for having shuls all together, while we raise our voice in prayer, and while we come to shuls together, u'zchut tfilat rabim, and the fact that there's a special, unique zchut merit of davening together with the tzibur, zehu shelivnei adam, zehu shiyu livnei adam makom yitkabtzu. There should be a place for people to come together. V'yodula ke'el shebraham, the place that we can recognize and that God created us. V'mtziyam v'farnasu zeh. That we can come together and we know we have a place where we're comfortable to say we recognize you, God made us. So the whole purpose for davening and the purpose for communal prayer and the purpose for synagogues is, if you got this idea that we have to recognize God, we got a place to do it, a place to be comfortable to do it. And this is what the rabbis intended when they said in the Yerushalmi and Tanit, that this is when the sailors on the boat cried out to God the people in Nineveh cried out to God with strength. That you see that if the people in Nineveh cried out to God with strength, so we should cry out as well and use a voice, because being strong, like chatzifa sonor to chutzpah a little bit, that we are raising our voice and we're yelling at God, this can overcome anything that's evil that wants to detract from the Almighty. So this is so far so good. So now, one final point. Everybody understand what's going on here? What are we saying? Therefore, that the whole purpose of the Exodus story was to show people the validity of one God. The whole purpose of showing validity of one God is not just for Egyptians, but for us. The whole purpose of the mitzvos is to remember this. That's why there are so many mitzvos of Zeich and Yetzias Mitzrayim. And there are other mitzvos as well. And that's why we come to Shul to daven, to recognize the power of God who made the world and made us and so forth.
What's the purpose of the Goy?
What's the purpose of the Goy? They have 7 mitzvot, one of which is they should recognize they shouldn't worship idols. They just missed the boat. The truth is, the Rambam writes in the end of Hilchos Malachim, I think Malachim or Ramrim, says that the Goyim in his day have advanced since the days of idol worship. The two major world faiths have gotten beyond simply polytheistic beliefs. We've talked about this. So they don't have to keep the mitzvah, but they recognize there's one God. Sheva mitzvahs b'nei Noach are a very primitive form of recognizing one God and certain other powers. And certain powers that God has, not other powers.
Right. So we have more mitzvot, so we need more help than the Goyim.
So no, we're not that we have more help, we have a greater connection, we have a closer connection. It's like saying people who work in the palace and people who are living at the end of the kingdom.
But all the mitzvot were given so we can
we have a special, that's our purpose.
Right.
Correct.
But the Goyim do it with Sheva.
The Goyim have a less of a connection, so they have less of a purpose. In other words, God made the Jewish people to be the Or LaGoyim to an extent. How we Or LaGoyim? By recognizing God. By doing His mitzvot. By doing His mitzvot, it helps us remember that God is there. When we do it, people say, they're doing it, maybe there's something to it. Right? People say, you've always heard, you people do this, you people do this.
So the whole purpose of creation was so that we recognize that.
Right. So that if everybody else doesn't do it, we're doing it, and that gives validity to the world. If we would stop doing it, the world would implode. So, but it's talking to us. It's talking to we who are the people of the coming through the Exodus. Okay? Okay. I don't know, but it wasn't worth it disturbing everybody. It's not just wasn't. And by keeping the miracle, by knowing the miracles that were gadol, great, and were publicized to everybody. And this is the clincher. It brings it down to a smaller level. If you know the story of the Exodus, and you can relate to the events of the Exodus, and you see how God did all these things in public, and everybody recognizing, you got to recognize the power of God if you accept the story of the Exodus. If you do this, from this, Adam modeh banisim hanestorim. Then a person can also recognize the hidden miracles that occur. Shem Yesod Torah Kulo. That this is the foundation of the Torah. God is not only the God for a one-time shot of bringing 10 plagues or splitting the sea. The world itself, every day of life is a small miracle. And we all know the days we don't feel well, and suddenly a little bit thing is out of whack, and the whole world is just caving in on us. She'ein l'adam chelik b'torat Moshe Rabbeinu ad shenamid. A person doesn't really have a part of the Torah. Ad shenamin shechol dvoreinu mikrim kulam nisim she'ein b'em teva minago shalom. Until a person recognizes that everything that happens, kol dvoreinu, all the events, all the mikrim, all the things that happen, kulam nisim, they're all miracles. She'ein b'em teva minago shalom. It's not just that they're nature and the way of the world. Not they run on autopilot. Not just it happens by itself, it's a God who runs it. Because if you believe that God could do the 10 commandments, the 10 plagues, and break the laws of nature, you have to understand and accept as well, He made the laws of nature. So what we call nature, what we call natural existence, is really also the functioning of God. If He can break it, He could make it. In other words, bein b'rabim, bein b'yachid, whether it's the laws of nature that apply to a group, or whether to an individual. Elam yasem mitzvot yatzlichu tzcharav. If a person does the mitzvot, he'll be rewarded. V'im yavar lehem yikaresenu ansho, then he'll get the punishment. Hakol b'gizerat elyon. Everything is the decree of God. Kasher eskarti kfar, as he's talked about in other places before. We talked about the fact that the Torah in Vayikra at the end talks about the rewards and punishment are natural events. We did it last week, I think. The tochacha, what's the tochacha of reproof? If you don't follow my commandments, there'll be drought, there'll be famine, the skies will close up, nations will come and will defeat you. All of this is nature. Right? The Ramban says that's exactly what it is, to tell you that the laws of nature are the working of God. And this will now, you'll become, be able to publicize, it'll be publicized to you that the hidden miracles that happen with the majority or with the people, which comes through the words of the Torah and the brachot and kolot, this is the end of Vayikra, the end of Dvarim, are really HaKadosh Baruch Hu is working with nature, K'moshe Katuv, as it says in the Tochacha, or right after Tocha. Why did God do this to this land? That it became, the people were punished and thrown out. And the people will say, the nations will say, this is in Parshat, I think Hazino of Zota Bracha, I don't remember now. Or is it maybe in Kisavo? The nations will say, why did this all happen? Why did these terrible things happen? Because they left the Torah. So people will recognize the Torah is telling you the reward and punishment is not about something supernatural. It's about the natural sequence of events which go awry, which are tweaked by God. It'll be publicized to all the nations that God is the one who's in charge of nature. And when we keep the mitzvot, it will be positive. And people will see if we keep the name of the words of God, or we keep the laws of God, and God's name is upon us, and they'll be afraid of us. And I'll explain it more in the end of Sefer Vayikra. So the whole purpose of the story of the Exodus is to recognize the power of God. If you recognize the power of the God, you want to do the mitzvot to remember that. You want to do the mitzvot, you want to daven. If you recognize the power of God in the 10 plagues, you'll eventually recognize God in nature as well, and God really controls everything. So this is the whole piece of really foundational belief of what Judaism is. Ramban is saying, and look, in my generation, he says, I don't see the sea splitting in half. Right, we know that. In fact, the Ramban has, as we've talked about, the Ramban himself had to run away to Eretz Yisrael because he was afraid after he won the disputation against Pablo Cristiani that they were going to come after him. So he couldn't say, God simply split the sea and saved me. So he had to run away in his life. So you understand that sometimes you don't see it, but if you know the story, it really has an application for us. Great Ramban. Probably one of the best Rambans in the whole Torah. Okay. Good? Question, comment? No comments. Blew you away.
Two comments.
Yes.
Firstly, it hits me that this is very similar to the first Rashi in a way.
Why did we talk about the creation story? To show that God created the world. Yeah. And therefore, but the purpose of the first Rashi is actually to tell us why we have the land of Israel.
Right. And in other words, tying back into Yetzias Mitzrayim.
Right.
And we have the other one is kind of related to that. If know if I can say this right. The purpose of Yetzias Mitzrayim is to show to prove God's existence, as opposed to what the Zara people.
Okay.
And so it's not just to make us into a nation.
All right.
It's a broader thing than just creating the Jewish people. So that, for example, the people in Nineveh could recognize this also, right? It would work for them. They don't take it further, whereas we take it further because He made us into a nation. But in other words,
everybody can recognize God. Yes. Right.
And they see it, but they recognize God through Yetzias Mitzrayim.
Right. Okay. But that's why that is such a fundamental part for Jewish people, and I guess for anyone else, I suppose. But really, Ramban is speaking more to us at this point.
Right.
Okay. Let's go backwards in time. So before the Jewish people come out of Egypt, in chapter 12, they get the first mitzvah. What's the first? Then not the first mitzvah in the Torah. The first mitzvah in the Torah is procreation. Right. Second mitzvah in the Torah is Second mitzvah in Torah is circumcision.
Look after your procreation.
Okay. First one is procreation pruruvu, which is given to Adam and Eve. The second one is circumcision, which is given to Avram. The third mitzvah is a negative mitzvah, and that is, of course, the gid hanasha, the sciatic sinew, which you cannot eat, which we have to excise from the animal. Okay. So those are the only three mitzvot that are in the first. The gid hanasha, the sciatic sinew that you cannot eat from the back leg of the animal. It's actually.
Can you use it to put together parchments?
Can you use it to put together parchments?
What we took yesterday.
It's a good question. I think so. I think it's only a prohibition to eat. Akain lo yochlu. The truth is we don't because it's in the hindquarters. It does not. We usually don't take it out. I don't know if we ever talked about that. We don't trade by the back end of the animal, and that is in the back end of the animal. By the way, when you talk about being a sinew, the term gid is not a anatomy term. It's not a biological term. It's a butcher term. Not a butchered term. It's a term that's used colloquially. So gidim can be gidim of veins. They can be arteries. They can also be nerves. The sciatic sinew, the gid hanash, is actually the sciatic nerve.
Can that be used for attaching the?
That's what he wanted to know.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's exactly what he asked. Okay. Everybody asks the same. He asked the same question, right?
We were talking about.
So I think the answer is yes. I think you just can't eat it. Okay, but I'm saying I think you can.
Okay.
So it's actually it's a long nerve, correct? It's a very long nerve that goes all the way into the leg, all the way down the leg, and if you ever have sciatica, you understand where that nerve is coming out right here, right? It comes out right here, somewhere around this area, goes right, and that's usually sciatica can be related to where it's coming out, it's being pinched, and it comes all the way down. But that's based upon the fight with Yaakov. That's a negative commandment.
So that's actually, because it's a nerve, it's not the sinew that we use for...
I guess so, you're right, so that's correct. There you go. Thank you. You asked the question, you answered the question.
What's that?
It's not a sinew that you would use, which is really more of a... you can sew with. It's like a tendon. It says, right. It's really a nerve. It's a long nerve. Yes.
It's a nerve.
No, I was going to say.
Yeah. My grandfather was a butcher.
Yes. Right. They used to be monocular. They used to be monocular.
Yeah,
they used to back in your country. Maybe they probably did it back until.
T-bone steak.
Right. Yes, you can. There, just well, you get T-bone steak. You get sirloin steak.
It's just the same as that.
Right. So the truth is, and I think we've talked about this, right? Remind me, I'm starting to repeat myself. Or to say it somewhere else. The fact that we're not monocular has to do with the fact that it's very time consuming. There were countries that were monocular. They were monocular in Eretz Yisrael, and they were monocular until about the 1700s. Then I point out that the issue came up in Poland in 1936. I think I said this one time here. No, you say yes. Tell me if I said it. Stop me from the middle. Said in 1936. In 1936, the Polish Parliament passed a law. This becomes really not relevant because 3 years later it's overrun by Nazi Germany. But they passed a law. The only people who could eat meat that was shechted were Jews. And they put this across the law because both a law to recognize cruelty to animals and also to say we love Jews. But of course what that meant is if the meat was slaughtered for Jewish consumption and became treif, until then they would give it to the goyim. Now they couldn't. So there's not really a high percentage of animals that become treif, but the whole back half of the animal that was shechted could no longer be sent off to non-kosher slaughter. So this came up in 1936, a very serious shaila. Could they now reinstitute trebering in Poland? It's a major shaila. Could they reinstitute trebering, nikur, which is taking out all the parts of the veins from the back part of the animal? Because for 200 years they had not been doing this. So not that they didn't know how to do it, but it looks like it's a minhag. Once you take a minhag upon yourself not to do something, can you upend it? And the answer was Rav Chaim Oizer Gruzinski, another says you can upend it, because the only reason they didn't do it was not because of minhag of a chumrah. It was a financial thing. It's not they said it's also just didn't pay to do it. So as a result, they did start doing trebering again in Poland in the 1930s, and then of course this is 36. 3 years later, the whole world caves in. But in Eretz Yisrael, which has a different kind of history, because the history of Shechita actually is that they had permission to shech. The people who initially had permission to shech were the Sephardim. The Ashkenazim only got permission to do Shechita in Eretz Yisrael. This is in the Ottoman Turks much later. The original permission was given only to the Sephardic community. They always did trebering from the back end of the animal, and so it's still done today under very good hashgachas. So if you want a T-bone steak or something from the back end of the animal, you can go to Eretz Yisrael. One final point. Or something more I wanted to say. Oh yes, one final thing about the Gid Hanasha, because I really want to come to talk about this. The Gid Hanasha is a sciatic sinew, so you don't really get to see that today because of the hindquarters of the animal. There is one case where they actually do traber it, not in Canada. They traber in the United States under the OU, and that is on deer, on venison. Okay, venison is a wild animal. Deer is a chaya. A deer does not have all the things that have to be removed, which is a lot of chalev and fats that have to be taken out from the back end of the animal. That's only for behemoth. There's a lot of fatty pieces that have to be removed. So they actually, you can actually eat the whole. They do traber the entire deer and venison under the OU, and they take out the Gid Hanasha. So the Gid Hanasha still has to be taken out. It's a very long thing. Okay, it's actually an extremely long nerve that goes all the way down. So if you wanted to, you can get venison in the United States. In Canada, they don't do it. They don't take it out, and they don't serve it. As far as I know, you cannot get kosher venison in this country. But if you go down to New York, ask for some venison. Okay. Anyways, all I'm saying, these are the 3 mitzvot, and these are 3 mitzvot in Sefer Breshit, Sefer Shmot. Now we come to talk about the 4th mitzvah, and someone said it before. The 4th mitzvah is Rosh Chodesh. Okay, setting up the months. And in chapter 12, in this Parshas Bo, we have where Hashem speaks to Moshe, and I think we'll just look at it very quickly because I think you know the psukim, and we want to talk about what the months really are more than actually the process. Chapter 12 in Parshas Bo, which begins on
349.
Thank you, 349 in the Chumashim. Okay. By the Hashem Moshe of Aaron, Beretz Yisrael Lemor, God speaks to Moshe now in the land of Egypt, saying, okay, this is really one of the few mitzvot given in Mitzrayim. This and the Korban Pesach and the laws of Pesach. All the other mitzvot are given in the wilderness. So it's given to Moshe and Aaron. Really, it's given to the Jewish people. Moshe and Aaron are the ones who receive it, will then tell over the Jewish people. This month is the first of the months. Rishon hu lachem l'chadshei hashana, page 340, 48, 49. Okay, and therefore that's the mitzvah. Okay, in the beginning of the next pasuk, and it goes on to talk about preparing for the Korban Pesach. So it's really this one pasuk. This month will be for you the first of the months, and it'll be the first of the months for all the months of the year. So a couple of things to learn from this. First of all, that it's for us. It's for you. So you are going to create designated people who will declare when is Rosh Chodesh. This is the whole process of witnesses who would see the moon, who would come to the Beit Din. And based upon the witnesses and based upon the Beit Din interrogating them and finding out whether they saw it or didn't see it, they would come to a decision that was either Rosh Chodesh this day or Rosh Chodesh, or they didn't see it was Rosh Chodesh the next day. But it's given to us, which means that we have the right to adjust the calendar on our own. Comment?
I had a question from the previous lectures. You said that Cheshvan and Kislev are the only
swing months
that we alter them in order to make sure that Hoshana Rabbah doesn't fall on Shabbos,
yes,
it doesn't fall on Friday or Sunday.
Yes.
So what happened in the time when we declared the Rosh
It could occur. It could occur on Shabbat. Right?
No, the rabbis wouldn't play a trick or something.
They would not play. No, they would not play a trick. If depended on people seeing it, then depended people on seeing it. And you could have Yom Kippur going from Friday into Shabbos. It could occur. Okay, and the fact that they couldn't do Hoshana Rabbah, and Hoshana Rabbah, they couldn't take the right. That was less important because when they had a base of Mikdash and a Mishkan, they were going around the Mizbeach once every day anyway, probably with Hoshana. It's not clear Hoshana, Lulav, and so forth. So
Yom Kippur was what was the problem?
If Yom Kippur comes on a Friday and a Sunday, then you can't prepare. You can't prepare for 2 days in a row. Nothing. Right. So you couldn't cook. You couldn't cook for 2 days in a row. You want something? Go to Israel today. Go to Israel today when Rosh Hashanah comes out on a Friday and a Thursday and Friday, and they go crazy that they're 3 days in a row they have Yontif because Eretz Yisrael, the people in Israel, only used to having 1 day of Yontif, and at best they'll have a Friday Shabbos, right? Friday Yontif or Sunday Yontif, but 3 days in a row they don't know what to do. They go out and Amsterdam. So it happened. It happened. Anyways, back to the ranch here. So the first thing we learn about this is the fact that we have the right to make Rosh Chodesh. Okay, and Moshe and Aaron are the designates to designate who will that be. But the other part of it is, and that's the focus of this Ramban, is that this month, HaChodesh is Elachem Rosh Chodashim. This month, which is this month? Which month are we talking about?
Nisan.
The month of Nisan is the first month. Rishon L'Chadshei Hashanah. And really, when we count months, and you've heard this, we count years by changing years of Tishrei. Correct? We count months by counting months from Nisan. Now today we use the words Nisan, Iyar, Sivan. But the real name of the months that they're called is really first month and second month. If you look all through the Torah and all through the Tanakh, you only find the term that's used Chodesh Harishon, Chodesh Hasheni. Right? It doesn't refer to the months as months of the year. So, for example, I'll just read this verbally in Parshas Pinchas. Not Parshas Pinchas, is it? Well, let me just find if I can see it in Vayikra somewhere very quickly. In Parshas Emor, which lists all the holidays. Okay? This is chapter 23. I'm just going to read it quickly. Don't even look. On the first month, the 14th day in the evening is going to be Pesach. And the next paragraph is going to be that you're going to count to Shavuos. And then we're told that's counting 7 weeks. And then we're told this is the fall holidays. The 7th month, the first of the month, is going to be Yom Teruah, Zichron Teruah, which is Rosh Hashanah. And on the 10th of the month, the 10th of the 7th month, is going to be Yom Kippurim, right? And on the 15th, the 15th of the 7th month is going to be Chag HaSukkot, and so forth and so on. So it's not identified as the month of Tishrei. The month of Tishrei only appears really in the Tanakh, in Sefer Megillas Esther. You find both are mentioned, the number of the month and the names as well. These names actually relate and were brought back from Bavel. They're Babylonian names. They were adapted in the book of Esther. It's the only place where you find that actually both the terms are used back to back to identify the months. In all the other books of the Bible, most of the books of the Bible, it's only identified by using the number of the month in the course of the year. So the Ramban is going to talk about why that is, and why the change that takes place when we get to Megillat Esther. Why are both months being used? Let's see, does he have Megillat Esther here? You want an example from this? Yeah. Okay. Here we go. Yeah. Where were the months found? Let's see. See if I can find it quickly.
It issues the decree.
Right. Okay. Comes out a couple places. I don't know if I can find it as quick as I thought I could. Okay, right, here we go. Asher Yigid Dvar Melech V'Tisol Le'asos Bayom Asher Sibui Oivedim L'Shol Bahem V'Nafalchu Asher Shloto Yidim V'Hem Amsonehem. So it had on the 12th month, which is the month of Adar, on the 13th of the month, or the day that the non-Jews were going to rise up against the Jewish people, it turned around and we rose up against our enemies. So what's it identified as? It identifies the 12th month, which is the month of Adar. Now why then, and we'll talk about this in the Ramban. Okay, so let's go to the Ramban, is on chapter 12 in the Ramban, verse 2, and you guys have the book, so you have to find it here. Okay.
If it's the first one, it's page 208.
It should be the first one in chapter 12. Okay, 208. Let me find it. Can you find 208 there? So the Ramban is going to actually put forth once again, this is also a very significant Ramban. Here you go. Yeah, right here. Okay, here we go, Harold. So Chodesh is Elechem Rosh Chodashim. Which page is it on? Shin Chav Dalet. Okay, the top. Chodesh Elechem Rosh Chodashim. So says the Ramban, Zu mitzvah rishona shetziva HaKadosh Baruch Hu Yisrael Eidei Moshe. This is the very first mitzvah that God gave to the Jewish people through Moshe. Not the first mitzvah in Torah, because we told you the three in Bereshis. V'lachein amar be'eretz Mitzrayim. And it tells you that it was given in Egypt. Who cares where it was given? Why? Ki shar mitzvot shebetorah hayu b'har Sinai. Because the rest of the mitzvot were given where? At Sinai. Right? They were repeated later on, but we believe that all the mitzvot were rattled off very quickly by God at Sinai. This is what the Ramban suggests, which is fascinating, right? They got it all. Maybe it's coming to tell you the land of Egypt, not the city of Egypt, because that God didn't speak to Moshe in the city, because the city was too full of all the idols of Pharaoh. So when God appears to Moshe has to go out of the city. You could say to your ear, when I go out of the city, I will ask God and have take the plague away from you, says Moshe. And really it should have said, not to speak to, it shouldn't have said, should have said, that should have been the opening here, that God says, speak to the people, to say, HaChodesh is Elechem Rosh Chodashim, and so forth. But the fact that it says God speaks to Moshe and Aaron, HaChodesh is Elechem, they're really the place of the Jewish people. It says, "Achodesh Elochem, Keneged Yisrael Adoratam," for all the Jewish people for all times. V'chazav Amar Dabru al Kol Adat Meisol. It just scrambles around the order. Really, it should have said, God spoke to Moses and Aaron, speak to the people. You're going to make Rosh Chodesh. This is Rosh Chodesh. Shitzavei Mitzvat Sha'ah Lakachat Pechtzech Mitzvah Mivyasar. Should have then spoken to the Jewish people. Speak to the people that they're going to do Rosh Chodesh, and right now they're going to prepare the Korban Pesach, which is the next couple of psukim in the chapter we didn't look at. L'fi Midrasho. And according to the Medrash, the fact that it says "Achodesh Hazel Lachem" and you, Moshe and Aaron, are the ones to receive it, is to tell us Lomar Shekidush Achodesh Stark Beitin Mumchin, that you can't just, not every Tom, Dick, and Harry in the Jewish people can get up and say I'm making Rosh Chodesh. You can't just, three guys can't just simply get up and say, give a clap and say we want to make Rosh Chodesh. You have to have a designated Beitin of scholars, of people who are learned and trained and so forth. It doesn't say therefore to speak to the Jewish people, because it's not really to all the Jewish people. Because really the mitzvah of Kiddush HaChodesh, of declaring when the moon is to a designated group who are like the Moshe and Aaron of their generation. The same way that Moshe and Aaron were the religious leadership, right? Moshe is the political religious leader, Aaron is the ritual religious leader. So too in every generation you will have some kind of Sanhedrin or Beit Din Agadol or some kind of Beit Din of Mumchin who will be the designates to choose Rosh Chodesh on behalf of the people, and not everybody else, and no one else.
We have that today?
We don't have that today, because this goes like this all the way to about the year 450, when Hillel HaKatan, the second Hillel of Jewish history, comes and sets up the calendar for all time. Okay. But it means we don't really have things the way we would have liked to have them, but we have to make it work. So we have Hillel was able to give out the Jewish calendar. Do we talk about Jewish calendar here? Yes, we did. Okay, good. And the reason here now the Ramban talks about why it's called Rosh Chodashim. This is the first month. Shemnu Oto Yisrael Chodesh Rishon. The Jewish people should count this as the first month. Mimenu Yimnu Kol Chodashim Sheni U'Shlishi Atashlu Mashana B'Shnei Chodesh. This will be month number 1. The next month, the year is going to be month number 2. The month will be month number 3. Why? Why is this important that it's the first, second, third, fourth, fifth, 12th month? This is also to remember the miracles of Egypt. In other words, every time we say this is the first month, what is it now? We are now in which month are we are now? Teves. Teves, we're in Shvat. So we're now in the 11th month. When I say that I'm in the 11th month, if I were to write on my top, this is the 11th month of the year. This is, what is today? Tuesday, the second base Shvat. Right? I'm saying the second, but I'm not saying second Shvat, second of the 11th month. I'm now remembering the first month I came out of Egypt. I'm remembering the Exodus story, like we just did the Ramban at the end of the Parsha. Well, remember the Neisach and Iskar. Therefore, the months have no names in the Torah. They're simply called B'chodesh Hashlishi, the third month. Or it says V'hi B'shina Shinit B'chodesh Hashini, the second year, the second month. It says in Bamidbar, and the cloud went up. Or B'chodesh Hashvi B'chad B'chodesh. This is Rosh Hashanah in the Bamidbar Perek Chavtet on the 7th month, the first of the month. And why is this? The same way that we count the days of the week for Shabbat. We don't say Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. We say Yom Rishon, Yom Shini, Yom Chamishi by Shabbat. To remember the creation, Kmo Shafaresh, Kacha Zechira B'Tziat Mitzrayim B'Mnotenu HaChodesh HaRishon HaChodesh HaShini V'Shlishi Gulatenu. So too, we're going to remember by counting the months by their number, the actual month of our redemption. Shein Minyan Hazel Shana, because it's really not counting for the year. Shvei Tchilat Shnotenu MiTishrei. We count our year from Tishrei. So why are we counting months in the beginning, the middle of the year? Why is the first month, which is really the middle of the year, it should be not the first month, but we do it specifically to remember the Exodus, and it's not the beginning of the year. Why? The holiday of the ingathering, that's Sukkot, it's at the end of the year. That's not the 7th month, really, that's the last month, but it's called 7th month to remember the Exodus in the first month. Uksiv b'tzeit Hashanah, the end of the year, that's also about Sukkot. Imken kishnekra l'chodesh Nisan Rishon l'Tishrei Shvi, when we took on Nisan the first month, and Tishrei the 7th month, Pitron Rishon l'Gula Shvi Leilel. So we're remembering the first for Geula, and we're saying that Tishrei is the 7th month from Gula, we're remembering the Exodus. V'zeh tam rishon hu lachem. And this is what I mean, the first for you. Sheinenu rishon b'shana. It's the first for you to count, not the first of the year, because the first month of the year is really the month of Tishrei. Hu rishon l'shem shnikra lo l'zichron gulasenu, to remember the Gula from Egypt. Okay? So this is it. Now what do we do today? We don't use those names. We use Nisan, Shvat, Adar, and I showed you Megillat Esther do the same thing as well. And the Yerushalmi in Masechet Rosh Hashanah also. The Medrash says that as follows: V'amru Shemot Chadashim Alu Imahem Imanam Mibavel. New names, when the Jewish people came back from the Exodus to Babylonia after 70 years, they brought back new names that began using for the months of the year. And that's why in the book of Esther, which is written in the end of that diaspora period, and they're still in Paras Amadai, they're going to call them by the months of the names that were used. Initially we didn't use the names Nisan, Sivan, Iyar, and so forth. Why? Initially we want to remember the Exodus. We want to remember the first Gula, the first redemption. But when we came out from Bavel, in other words, we were exiled to Bavel and came back after 70 years, and we carried out what Yirmiyahu prophesied before the destruction, that will come back. Here's the quote from Yirmiyahu chapter 16. People will not say, Chai Hashem asher lo ad bnei Yisrael me'eretz Mitzrayim. They're not going to say, swear by God who took the Jewish people out of Egypt. They're not going to swear by that God, the God power who took us out of Egypt, but rather they will swear, Chai Hashem asher Allah, asher avei et bnei Yisrael me'eretz Tzafon. The power of God that took us back from the land of the north, which was, in this case, Bavel. Babylonia is northeast of Israel. So the Yirmiyahu says, even though you're about to get destroyed, you will come a time where you will recognize the power of God, not just it took you out of Egypt, but also took you out of the land we are about to be exiled to in the north. So when that happened, we started to use the names of the Babylonian names. Because there we were exiled, there we stayed, and God didn't abandon us, He brought us back. Because these are all really Persian names. They actually may even be derived from certain idols. And the only place where we find these names being used is very few places. In Zechariah, Ezra, Nehemiah, in a few places, and he says Megillat Esther, in the Megillat Esther, because these are all books that were written at the end of the exile or right when they came back. Zechariah is the prophet from the end of when they come back from the exile. Ezra and Nehemiah are the books of the Bible when they're coming back from the exile. All of these books are using now names of the terms Adar, Nisan, and so forth. And therefore it says in Megillat Esther, it says, B'chodesh Rishon u'chodesh Nisan. There was the example I was looking for, chapter 3. The first month, which is the month of Nisan. Or it says, He pil purahu garol. He threw the pool, which is a garol. So both names, and I was just giving an example where two names used together. V'yad hayom agoyim b'artzot parat u'madai, kachim kar masam. And even today, these names are not Jewish names. They were adapted into Hebrew, but there are really non-Jewish groups in Persian and media in that whole area of Babylonia which still use these names, not in Jewish correspondence, in their own correspondence of Tishrei and Nisan and so forth. As B'chalon Kamonu, V'hinei Naskir B'chadashim HaGulah Kasher Asinu Arheina B'Rishna. And the reason we're doing this is we want to remember the second Gula as well as the first. So what happened was we got out of Egypt, we started using the names months 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th. We got sent off to the exile to Babylonia. We came back from the exile. What do we want to say? God took us out of Egypt? That's old hat. So we therefore use the names that we learned in Bavel to say God took us out of Bavel. So we don't count from the months of coming out of Bavel, we count the months that we used in Bavel as a way to remember that we were in Bavel, and now we got a second crack to come back and to live in Eretz Yisrael for Bayit Sheni. So that's the second Ramban, okay? Which will take us up to 11 o'clock. Okay? And I think we'll take the 5-minute break here, and then we'll come back and learn Pinei Halacha. I'm going to give you a teaser for our class on, when's the next time we do Parsha? Thursday? Well, Nesiva Shalom, I'm going to give you a teaser yet. But something we'll do before Nesiva Shalom, and that is what kind of animal is Tzfardea?
Sephardea, Kinim.
No, not Kinim, it's Tzfardea. You're all going to say it's frogs, right?
Sephardim.
We still say Hayim Sheni.
So we still, because that didn't change.
That didn't change.
Because the names were not, we did not adapt Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. No, we didn't. Well, they're Sunday, Moon Day. They're not even Persian. They're much later. They're Greek. Yes. They're different goddesses. Thursday is Thor's Day.
That's why it's interesting.
So I forgot the others. Fridays.
It's going to be a toast.
Right, and that's when we use them. But these were not so much of Avodah Zarah, they were simply the names that they were using. So why do we replace them? So we want to remember God also redeems the people in other times. So the second Gula, the second Beis Mikdash, is we're remembering this by using these names.
Why didn't we go back to the
first one?
The first counting of the months after we lost the second Beis Hamikdash? After the destruction of the second Beis Hamikdash?
Because we want to remember that God didn't abandon the Jewish people and took us back from the second Beis Hamikdash. After the second Beis Hamikdash was destroyed.
Right.
Because we
are still remembering that Geulah in the middle, which is...
Because we want to remember that God will take us out again and again.
Because we did go back to Austerity.
Right.
What happened in the second Beis Hamikdash?
They didn't fast on days.
They didn't fast, right?
Right.
So then we went back.
Right.